What's going on, guys? Sam Adams here, and to be honest, I'm extremely tired because I actually worked the night shift from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. last night, but I still wanted to sit down for a couple of minutes today and talk about the Tom Clancy's The Division beta. Now, if you don't know, depending on what platform you were running the beta on, it ran from January the 28th until February the 2nd, and it gave players kind of an early glimpse at what we could expect from the game that's coming out on March the 8th. And if you've never heard of the game, it's pretty much a third-person shooter that has a lot of RPG elements mixed into it. So there is a lot of armor collecting, there are weapons scattered about the world the enemies drop. There are enemies that are stronger than other enemies, so they might drop some better loot. It kind of has that Destiny thing going on, if I dare venture out to compare to Destiny. It has the same kind of loot thing going on, and it has the same kind of idea where it takes the standard first-person shooter, but it's a third-person shooter in this case, and it applies some RPG elements to kind of mix up the gameplay. Now, while talking about this beta, I'm not going to go extremely in-depth because, quite frankly, I came at this game from a novice player's perspective. I didn't have any kind of prior knowledge of what The Division was about. I hadn't watched much gameplay of it. I had seen a couple of trailers that had been shown throughout the years, but I never really sat down and looked up what the game was about, so I just kind of entered into the game, and this is kind of what I thought about it. So, a couple of the things that I did like. First off, the cover system is done extremely well. Think Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell Blacklist or Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Future Soldier, and then take everything that those games did right with the cover system and just kind of turn the knob up to 11, so to speak. I think that they did really well with kind of changing the way that Tom Clancy's controls normally played, and they just tweaked it just enough so that it worked really well with the kind of maps that they created in the Division, with the kind of a distance between the different kinds of cover that you can cling to. I think that maneuvering the map, especially during combat, is done extremely well. Speaking of the map in general, and also the map of the main mission that is included with the game, I have to say that I'm pretty impressed with both the atmosphere and the way that it's laid out. Let's start off with the missions map. Pretty much, there's just enough cover so that you can safely stay hidden and still attack the enemy whenever they're out in the open. It doesn't feel like you are streamlined into one certain way. Obviously, the mission is pretty linear, but at the same time, you can go about it and traverse it in many different ways so that you don't really feel locked down like some games would normally make you feel. That's one of the things I remember about Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Future Soldier, is that it felt like I had to go to the exact same cover each and every time to get the best possible view of the enemy, and I'm not really getting that vibe from The Division. There is definitely a certain route that you can take and that your brain automatically tells you to take every time, but there are other ways to do it, and I think that that is very important in the longevity of the game, just so that you can go back into these missions and you can go about them in different routes so that you can kind of switch things up and keep it fresh. Now, with the map as a whole, I have to say that I'm pretty impressed with the atmosphere overall, in addition to the surprising lack of fast travel that I didn't really understand to begin with. So if you aren't aware, the game takes place in kind of a 2 weeks after a disease kind of setting in New York, where the government has had time to come in and set up some clinics and get people, get those that were sick as healthy as they can get, and then clear the bodies out of the streets. It's kind of that setting, and I like that dystopian kind of future thing that they have going on. I have to admit that I wasn't entirely on board whenever I first started playing, but as I kind of wandered around the streets, and I was forced to wander around the streets, mind you, we'll get into that in just a second, I found it kind of growing on me, and I definitely think that this is the kind of game that I could really get into after a good while. You know, I could really get into this game. So that brings me back to the point that there is not your customary kind of fast travel within this game, and what I mean by that is that you can fast travel to certain big iconic locations, but you cannot fast travel within the dark zone. You can't really fast travel to any particular point on the map. There are missions that you can fast travel to and other big things like that, and you can even start missions directly from your menu, but you can't really just fast travel wherever you want willy-nilly, which was kind of surprising because the game, even the beta, is fairly large, including the dark zone. And if you cut out all of the loading screens and whatnot whenever you're transitioning from the main game into the dark zone, or however you want to look at it, it probably would take about 30 minutes to cross the entire map. So taking that into consideration, it seems like fast travel is a no-brainer, but had they included it within the beta, I wouldn't have experienced half of what I actually ended up getting into, half of the engagements that I ended up getting involved in, the fact that I have to wander the streets really makes it feel like this is kind of a dystopian, fallen apart version of New York, and I really don't have any other option except to walk from point A to point B and deal with whatever I run into along the way. So that brings me to some of the things that I don't like, and the first thing on that list is the gunplay, because all of the guns kind of feel the same depending on what type of gun you're using. Now, I have to say that there are different levels of guns, kind of like in Destiny, where you could get anything from blue, let's see, green, blue, yellow, and purple, not necessarily in that order, but you could get different colors of guns and they would have different amounts of damage, they would have different kinds of things that set them apart from the other tiers of guns, and that same kind of thing is definitely going on in the Division, but with another level. There are those exact same color divisions. Actually, you can find legendary loot, so to speak, and it is golden, and then you can find stuff that is purple and blue. I think blue was the highest thing in the beta that I found, and but that's beside the point. What I mean is that whenever you're playing with an assault rifle, you can definitely tell that it is an assault rifle. Whenever you're playing with an LMG, they all kind of play the same. Whenever you're playing with a carbine or a sniper rifle, they all pretty much feel the same. And that's something that I don't really like in a game, and that's kind of where I think they should take, and I pray to God they don't take this the wrong way, they should take a page from Call of Duty or Battlefield. Specifically Battlefield. Let's go with Battlefield. Whenever you're playing with a UMP-45 and compare that to, say, like an MP5K, I'm not even sure if these guns are in Battlefield, but you can definitely tell that they are two completely different submachine guns. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can definitely tell that one thing is set apart from the other, and one thing is a completely different total entity from the other one, and that's something that the Division is kind of lacking, because whenever I picked up a new assault rifle, I didn't feel like I had found something that was really of value. I just felt like I had found another weapon that I could potentially use that would pretty much have the exact same effect and not really change the gameplay that much. So now let's talk about the Dark Zone for a minute, and I am including this in the bad section of the video, but this is not supposed to mean that the entirety of the Dark Zone is bad. It's just, it definitely requires a certain kind of player or a certain group of players. So what I mean by this is that while I was playing the beta, I probably played about 4 hours alone in the Dark Zone, and then I played about an hour and a half with someone in the Dark Zone. And I wasn't with that person at all times. We didn't hook up and do any kinds of missions exclusively. We just kind of found each other, and we began doing stuff in the game. And I do know this person in real life, so we were able to talk on communications headsets. So pretty much you have a party chat, and then you have flying solo. And if you don't know what the Dark Zone is, it's pretty much the what people are calling the PvP section of the game. And it's kind of where all the rules are gone within the game. You can fire on whoever you want to fire on. If you see someone with a pack that you think might contain some kind of incredible legendary assault rifle or a legendary piece of armor, then you can go ahead and shoot them and take that before they extract it out. And there are new helicopters extracting out your loot every about a minute and a half, so that will pop up on your minimap. And so you pretty much just go around the Dark Zone collecting different kinds of resources and then gathering all of those up in this kind of little tube, attaching them to a helicopter, and then extracting them to your base so that you can then use those kinds of resources within the entire game itself in your inventory, because I believe the lore behind it is that they have to be disinfected from the quarantine. So flying solo, I did find a good many resources, and I was able to extract a lot, and I was able to find a lot of things to use in the main game, but I definitely got my ass handed to me a good many times from people that had gone rogue, aka shot someone else and then proceeded to shoot other people because they had no real option. There were manhunts going on, which is pretty much where you just hunt after one specific player that's on everyone's heads up display, and that guy was probably a level 9 or 10, probably about 2 levels above me, and so obviously he just completely kicked my ass, and that was the kind of experience that I was getting in the Dark Zone. But I did have a good time whenever I would run across specific events that were happening within the game with some artificial intelligence players, because whenever you stumble across these things, let's say there's a roadblock in the middle of the Dark Zone, I would be shooting some AI, and then someone else would come up and begin helping me take out this AI, and then at the end of the day we would find a whole bunch of loot, and then I actually kind of made a virtual friend, so to speak, because we used the emotes, we kind of communicated that we weren't going to shoot each other exclusively. You know, I wouldn't try to shoot him if he didn't try to shoot me, and we kind of teamed up and we began doing these little events here and there together, and we just kind of experienced the game. And although we had the option to kill each other and take the loot that each other had just earned from that little entanglement we had just gotten into, we didn't. And it's just kind of that sense of camaraderie and finding it in the game that I liked about the single player side of things. But at the same time, playing alone in the Dark Zone, you're kind of taking your life into your own hands, and you very well might lose some XP and a lot of resources if you don't play your cards right. However, if you do have a little clan or a group of people that enjoys going out into games like this and experiencing everything there is to experience, for instance, if you had an entire squad in Battlefield and you wanted to come over and play the Division, that would lend itself very well to the Dark Zone, because you can pretty much team up and take everyone else by storm, because there are a lot of solo players in the game, and you can either be the good guys that go around and help other people find resources and complete jobs and little missions here and there, or you could be this rogue gang of outlaws that just goes around and takes out everyone, and everyone would hate you, but it would still be fun to try and take you out. Pretty much the Dark Zone is what you make of it, but it definitely lends itself to the experience of having friends that can help you complete missions, that can help protect you if something goes wrong. Maybe a rogue player comes after you, or you are actually hey, you have a manhunt on your head, but of course, depending on the kind of friends you have, that might backfire on you. But the Dark Zone definitely lends itself to the group experience, and I get where Ubisoft is going with that, but I definitely think that they should tune it just a little bit so that there are more engagements that the single player might run across, so that it keeps the experience kind of going. I found myself wandering around the Dark Zone for probably 10 or 15 minutes before I even found anyone at some points, and that's kind of unacceptable for a gameplay experience, because I got visibly bored and I kind of thought about turning it off, except for the fact that I remembered if I turned it off and went and started doing homework, I probably wouldn't get the chance to get back on it because the beta was ending. So now this last point I don't classify as good or bad exclusively, but it is something I want to mention to anyone that is looking to pick up the game and normally plays a standard shooter, because I can imagine a lot of people coming over to Tom Clancy's The Division from games like Battlefield or Call of Duty, because there is just a similarity. It is a shooter game. This is kind of a drought time of year for first-person shooters that are main games on consoles, so I can imagine a lot of people are going to be trying out this game that might not normally pick it up on a standard fall release kind of schedule. And I have to say that there are a lot of RPG elements in the game, like I mentioned earlier. And so what I mean by this is that if you don't like equipping new armor very frequently that you find laying around and comparing the stats of different kinds of armor to figure out which one is better for your character setup, you might be kind of frustrated with this game. If you don't like finding new weapons and trying to constantly grind and get better gear, then you might not like this game. If you don't like modifying those weapons with the attachments that you find laying around, you might find this game frustrating, and so that's definitely something that you should know going into it. However, with that being said, I've played some games in the past that have had these RPG mechanics included in them, and they've been extremely frustrating, mainly because of the user interface. If a game doesn't have a good menu or a good way to go about customizing the character and upgrading loot and ammo and weapons and whatnot, then the game is going to feel very frustrating, and the player probably won't last that long, especially if they're not used to that kind of game. Tom Clancy's The Division does not do that. The first thing I noticed whenever I booted the game up is how clean and how simple the menus seem to look. And then whenever I got into the character customization side of things, where I was assigning different skills to my character, where I was changing around what armor I was wearing, where I was customizing weapons, I automatically picked up what I was supposed to do within probably about 5 minutes of just wandering around the menu. Now, I have played some games, like take Fallout for instance, where you have a very in-depth upgrade system and a very in-depth inventory system even within the Pip-Boy that probably takes about 2 or 3 hours of gameplay to even comprehend and learn how to use. You're not going to have that experience with The Division. Whenever you hop into the game, it's almost like a second nature, and you automatically know how to customize your character, and that's something that is kind of hard to find where a game does it this well, and The Division is a game that definitely does it well. So at the end of the day, does The Division have legs? Does it have some longevity with its life? And to be honest, I'm not entirely sure, because I'm getting some mixed signals. Personally, I really enjoyed the game, and I saw some elements within the gameplay that really stuck out to me, and I thought, you know, this could actually be a huge major player within the casual and the hardcore audience, depending on how easily people pick it up with that, fluid UI, with that easy loot system. There are a lot of things that are complex yet still simple that scratch the itch for hardcore gamers, but still leave some leniency for those that might just be getting into the genre. I like that about the game. However, I also saw some stuff that, it might kind of hinder it in the long run. I'm not really sure how it's going to work out, but at the end of the day, Tom Clancy's The Division had a very enjoyable beta, and I wasn't really expecting to enjoy it as much as I did, and I'm definitely glad that I did. And it also proved to me that Ubisoft is not completely writing off PC ports, and they've kind of upped their game on the quality side of things, because The Division is a quality game, and I can't emphasize that enough. I really enjoyed the beta, and in the past couple of years we have seen some kind of janky games that Ubisoft has put out, but it looks like The Division is finally changing that, and it's nice to see a change of heart on Ubisoft's front. But as far as the Division game itself goes, there are definitely going to be some tweaks made between now and the launch. There are going to be tons of tweaks made right after the launch when it comes to weapon balance, armor balancing, a lot of little small minute things that are going to change the game completely, so it's not necessarily worth giving a full opinion on right now. But what I can tell you is that after playing the beta, I'm definitely excited to see how this game turns out on March the 8th, and I'm definitely excited to play it and see where it goes going forward. So there you guys have it. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, drop me a like down below and comment what you think about Tom Clancy's The Division. Did you get into the beta? Have you watched some gameplay? What do you think about the game itself? Leave it in the comment section down below. And if you are new to the channel or you've never seen any of my other content, I do upload new stuff like 3 or 4 days a week depending on the week. So there's always something new right here on the channel when you drop by to watch some videos. And as always, I want to thank each and every one of you guys for watching this particular video. I'll talk to you soon. Peace.